Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. So welcome to the Odyssey Theatre. We're thrilled to be able to continue this, where's my light? There it is. To continue this series, Thresholds of Invention. We started it in January of 23. Some of that information is already in your program. And it's been very successful. We do it intermittently when somebody either approaches us with a project that is in development, or I know of somebody who is scribbling away or trying something out, and they want to find a place to have a first audience. First audiences, as most of you know who have anything to do with the theater, are really essential in terms of the development of any play. So you're actually not the first in this one. Sorry to say. Bob's done a couple of very small readings for a couple of other friends of his, etc. And therefore, if you've looked at any of the internet posts, you realize that they've already raved about it. So that'll be up to you after you see it today. We do a talk back at the end, and I know some people like squirm at the idea of talk back, so you can scurry out and we won't put your names on Facebook. But if you want to stick around, please do, because again, it's an essential part of the developmental process, and that's also in the program. So it's a great joy to have you here. One of the essential things to tell you is that my last name is not spelled Abatamarch. It's actually Abatamarco. I don't know how the H round, anyway, so I'm not related to Frederick March. It's about a Marco. And what else do I have to tell you? Please shut off your cell phones. You know how annoying that can be, and sometimes you really want to hit somebody who leaves their cell phone on. So don't do it. We've all been guilty of it. Don't do it. Exits, as you see, are there and there. We will take a very short, forgive my language, pee break at the very end, probably 3 minutes, and then you can come back. And finally, pertinent to the work that Bob has been doing on this show for quite a while, I just want to read one thing that feels pertinent to share with you. This tale is one of religious fervor set against a harsh landscape transfigured by war, poverty, and disease, only occasionally redeemed by tenderness and resilience. Sound familiar? So please sit back and enjoy In Some Dark Valley by Robert Bailey.
You ain't seeing things. I'm here, all right. The name is Reverend Brand. Know how it looks? Right about now, you might be asking yourself, is this a dream? I don't recall falling asleep. Ain't a dream. Might there be a visitation, though, who can say? Around these parts, there's always been visitations of one kind or t'other. Dirt roads cut through the woods. It's plumb dark at night, black as pitch. You can't hardly see your hand in front of your face. These are sounds you recognize, like the hooty owl or crickets or possum stepping on a dry twig. And then there's the sounds you can't quite put your fingers on. Them faint whispers of words you can't make out in the cool breath that brushes against the back of your neck. I've seen my Agnes more than once. Reaching out for me, wanting me to follow her deeper into the woods. Seemed like she got a dwelling place somewhere deep in the cleft of the forest where don't nobody ever find you. Seemed like our boy is there, safe and sound and over his fever and waiting on the two of us to come on home. I don't rightly know where I am just now. I've been walking along this here path for some time. I ain't too sure where it comes out to. I ain't seen a soul today. I ain't had a visitation. Pretty though here. Peaceful. Only thing I found was this here French harp laying on the stump. I looked around, I didn't see nobody. If I come across the owner, well, I'll return it to him. There was this old boy who used to sit on the courthouse steps and spin tales for anybody to listen at him. If he caught hold of your ear, you'd be there all morning. He'd start out simple and plain enough, but the longer you sat there, the more he'd pile on to keep you there. There didn't seem to be no end to it. Like when he was crossing Wesley Prager's field after dark, and he seen old General Longstreet on his steed. Full dress uniform, sword unbuckled and shining in the moonlight. Longstreet says, "Come on, Private, mount up back. We'll go ambush them Yankees that are camped out on Jonah's Ridge." Our old boy never disobeyed an order all during the war, and he weren't about to now, so he come up on back of Longstreet's steed. The two of them took off, went marauding through that Yankee camp and cut them down to a man whilst they was eating their supper. And as I remembered, them two went on galloping through the countryside till daybreak, and all the while our old boy's wondering where all these damn Yankee soldiers coming from. When the war had been over by 4 years, he didn't have time to think it through. They were so busy smashing through the camps and cutting them down and hooping and hollering, having themselves a right merry old time. So you see, there's always been visitations around these parts. I'm just a poor, wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world of woe. But there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to meet my mother, that she meet me when I come. I'm only going over Jordan, I'm only going over home. I'll soon be free of earthly trials, my body lay in the old churchyard. I'll drop this cross of self-denial, and I'll go singing home to God. I'm going there to meet my Savior. I'll dwell with him and I'll never roam. Oh, I'm just going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. Truth is, I should have been buried for good when the snow come barreling down in monstrous waves off the side of that mountain. I knowed it would end the minute that wild girl raised that shotgun and blowed that demon hawk out of the sky. wild girl. Every time I run up on her, she is looking at me that same awful way. When you gonna be doing what you know you're called on to be doing, preacher man? Her hair was matted and tangled up like a mess of roots. There was a blazing in her eyes. Them brown eyes of hers burned with a holy or an unholy fire. You couldn't tell which. I never wanted to stay where she was at. I never could look away, neither. Well, she had it all wrong when she come up on me that cold, windy afternoon. It was the blood dripping from my scalp and the cuts and bruises on my hands and arms made her drop down in the snow in front of me. But that blood weren't from no crown of thorns on my head. That blood weren't from no nail holes driven into my palms. I expect I'm bound to give you my testimony now. Now that we're getting along so well. I was born up in Dry Fork Hollow, where you didn't get no more than an hour of sunshine up in there every day. I didn't have no playmates. My daddy was an old man when I was born. My mother was still a young woman. Had me a little sister, but she taken a fever and died when she was 2. So it was just me and my mother and father in the cold, clammy dark. And I was still just a little bitty boy when my daddy took to his sick bed. I snuck up there in the corner of that bedroom and I listened at him trying to catch a breath, watching his chest move up and down in jerks like a buckboard driving over a Rocky Mountain road. And I stayed there wedged in my little corner till there weren't no more breathing. I stayed there in the dark, a hugging the pine walls. And of a sudden, the door flew open, and the woman come in and never even seen me in my corner. She goes to rummaging around under the bed, feeling around under the covers, and she don't find that money she's looking for. Stares down at my daddy, lifts his head up off that pillow, gropes around under the sheets all drenched in his sweat, and that's when she found what she's so keen on finding. And she tore that rope off that leather pouch with her teeth, counted out all the money that was in there, and then she spat out, "So that's all there is? I married an old man. I thrown away all my happiness in life for this?" The tears sprung up in her eyes. They weren't a speck of mourning for my daddy, no, just tears of rage and bitterness. He hadn't left her no more than what was in that pouch. That's what I seen. I was unseen in my little corner, but I seen what I seen. And that was the day. That was the day, young as I was, that I knowed I would walk out of that house as soon as I came of age. Leave my mother in that infernal darkness behind. Go out on my own and search for that God that would nurture my fierceness and bind up my every wound and set me on a path of righteousness and exaltation. First time I heard the voice, I was in my solitude in the woods. I couldn't have been no more than 6 or 7 years old. Ever since my daddy died, I was up and out of the house and on my own before the first light poked through in the morning. I was always taking a different path through the woods. This one was a twisty route. Snaked through tangled vines and briars and trees blown down through the last windstorm. I come across a wild hog rooting around in the dirt with his snout. Seemed to startle to see me as I was him. Pharaoh. Pharaoh, Pharaoh's only sugar drowned in Pharaoh. That voice floated out on the morning breeze like a ribbon come loose from a gal's hair. Seemed like I could see the voice, like it had a solid shape to it in the air. I followed the sound of it till I come out into a clearing. They weren't nothing but the meanest fallen down shack A few scrawny chickens pecking away some seed and corn kernel in the dirt. No camp garden off to one side with some dry stalks and cabbages, green beans, and such. Sitting up there atop a slanty porch, on a straight back chair, is where I seen Ludi singing her song. Go down, go down, go down, Moses, lead your children, go down. Her two boys could have been anywhere from 6 to 10-year-old who weren't that easy to tell. They were so thin with a look that was way past hunger, barefoot, holes torn in the shirts, trousers held up with a vine for a belt. Ludi just singing away. Part ways to them little ones, part ways to the pale blue light above the pines. Mary, Mary, Mary sure was Jesus' mother, Mary. I knowed I was an intruder, a white boy. Knowed I didn't belong there, but I didn't want to move on from there neither. Ludi come to the end of her last verse, they all sensed me at once. Ludi just fixed me hard with her eyes, which weren't neither friendly nor unfriendly, were just staring. Only thing I knowed, it was up to me to decide. I could either cross that yard or I could turn right around and go back the way I come. That's how I come to know Ludi and her boys. Seemed like I was there every day for a time. I had me some rough play with Charles and Henry. Now, they turned out to be a mite stronger than they looked, most particular when it come to wrestling. Ludi come out of the house with a pitcher of water, a plate of persimmons, and cool us down and tell her stories. Adam and Eve was doing just fine in the garden. Eve helped Adam make the crop. She done all the cooking and washing and ironing. There's just one thing come twixt them. Eve got too lonely every time old Adam snuck off to hunt and fish, it being no folks for her to talk to. One day she said, Adam, don't you find me some folks to keep me company while you're away? I ain't gonna let you hunt and fish. Well, Adam went off down the road studying what he's going to do about that when up comes the Lord. And Adam stopped him and said, Lord, please, sir, could you make some folks to keep Eve company so I could hunt and fish like I like to do? The Lord said, well, Adam, when you want these folks made? And Adam said, please, Lord, could you make them this evening? So the Lord told Adam to meet him after sundown by the creek where they got that good clay bank and they would make the folks. Adam showed up that evening, handed the Lord the clay, and done all the framing work while the Lord kneaded the clay, and he made the folks. He made some Hebrew children and some Christian children, some white children and some colored children, some Arabs and some Chinamen. Then he put them all up by the fence rail, and he said, now, Adam, meet me back here in the morning, because we're going to put the brains in these folks. Well, Adam showed up first thing in the morning, but there weren't nothing there. All them folks had walked off before the Lord come back. And they've been multiplying and replenishing the earth ever since. There's that one morning in late summer when Ludi gave me a look. Solemn. Still, like she'd never seen me before. Put down her mending. Sat there staring straight at me. something running mighty deep in you. Lest you recognize it and give it what it wants, you ain't never going to get no peace. Now you mind what Ludi tells you. I was too young to have no words for it, but I thought I'd know what she meant. Next morning I got there, right after sunup. They weren't nothing but a smoldering heap where the house had been. Ludi and her boys was gone. They'd been run off and burnt out. There weren't nobody I could ask about it. Nobody ever knowed I was going there. It's just like they'd never been there at all. Farewell. Farewell. Farewell, children, I'm sure I'm gonna leave you. Farewell. I kept them words of Ludi's to heart, though. In time, I grew to a man. I become what you know as a circuit preacher. I was always on the move, one day in one place, next day in t'other. And I had me a vision of God that I would preach to any man or woman, white or black, who would listen at me. And the day I met my Agnes, that woman who in the fullness of time would give up everything, leave everything behind me, and take up the burden of suffering with me. Well, that day, she come skipping uphill, holding hands, singing songs with a boy I recognized right off, a boy I'd done known from times past, Elijah. He was carrying a painter's easel, box of brushes and paints. I met the two of them as I come down from the mountain where I'd gone to minister to a young woman who lay dying from the milk sickness. And friends, you never see a happier pair of lovers, holding tight to one another, marching towards their future, not looking for salvation or glory anywhere but in each other's eyes. Elijah and my young Agnes. Right off, I could see further than that, and weren't no use denying it, to where that joy they was feeling turned to something else in time. Something ordinary and halfway, neither here nor there, a little bit of everything. Make love to each other on Saturday, go to church on Sunday, the way folks has always done. Make promises you can't always keep. Hold tight to what you bring in by the sweat of your brow. A little sin, a little virtue, just enough so that one destroys the other, each man or woman ends up being and nothing. So by and by, that young painter Elijah and I, we started into arguing about God. Well, now it's for certain, Brand, that God has blessed my union with Agnes here. You know, I figured you'd have become one of them fire-breathing ministers preach that hard gospel that all is vain, all joy is fleeting, and there ain't nothing but hell waiting for us at the other end of our desires. But friends, that weren't what I believed in at all. In them days, I hardly knowed if I could be called a Christian. I only knowed that I was a man. As a man, I could see there was something to draining away our spirits. So I asked that young painter, Elijah, kneel down in the dirt, draw me a picture of God as he seen him. Go on. Take a stick, draw me a picture, show me what he looks like, according to your beliefs. And he knelt down in the dirt there, drew that picture right quick, and friends, there he was. The old grandfather with the long beard, the damn scolding eyes, and I shouted out, there he is. There's the God of our country. There's the God we bow down to and worship, a dried up, feeble old man in his second childhood. Doddering, peevish old fool you want to put in charge of your eternal soul? Elijah laughed at me. But my Agnes, she looked like somebody just slapped her awake. I fixed them hard with my eyes. Well, he ain't my God. My God is young and strong as a soldier marching off to whip the Yankees. My God is a mighty hurricane. He's a tornado ripping through the valley, smashing everything to bits. My God is the voice, sounded just like thunder when he come out of the burning bush and dazzled the eyes out of the head of Moses. He is the Almighty One that stopped the sun in its tracks, worked miracle after miracle in the old times, and would be working them again today if folks like you wasn't so busy dying inside. I come down off that mountain. Agnes is following close behind me. Elijah's trying to pull her back away from me. And friends, the minute I seen that little brown church, the gravestones out back behind it, I knowed exactly where I was. I had come right on back to where I started. Little town I growed up in. It looked smaller and grayer than I remembered. It looked like it'd been swallowed up in a fog. And it had been. See now? That war come along. It drug on for 4 long years. North or south didn't matter none to us. We was all swallowed up in a wall of flame. Young boys in their prime blown all to hell, dumped into a ditch full of maggoty corpses. Widows and orphans wandered through the burn-up land like skeletons. Everything that ever been laying in ashes. God, seeing our sinful natures, he just unleashed his fury on every one of us. And now, riding up on a pale horse, on the heels of our defeat, had come a fearsome pestilence. They weren't a house in my town, didn't have the sickness in it. They weren't room enough in the graveyard behind Little Brown Church for all the bodies. And they weren't enough to eat. Dirty orphan children in rags is gnawing on turnips, and when the turnips give out, they caught rats, skinny cats, cooked them up in a rusty pot. And when there weren't no more scrawny animals and no more turnips, they scooped up that red clay dirt and stuffed it in their little mouths to stave off the hunger. That's what I come home to. That's where my feet had led me. A great cloud settled over my soul, and the only thing I wanted was to climb back up the side of the mountain, shake the dust off my boots, and turn my back on that cursed holler forever. God had other plans for me. People was all lined up now in front of the Little Brown Church to get that one crust of bread from the mayor, shoving each other aside while he doled out their rations and wrote their names down in a big black book. Don't push now. Don't push, everybody, please. We've all got to bear with humility what the Almighty done brung down on us and pray for his infinite mercy. Well, I seen it different. I seen the town I was born in had itself a chance that don't come along but once in a generation. Found myself a place to stand where everybody could see me. Crowd gathered. I seen my Agnes pushing her way to the front. God shows you his mercy today by making you afraid. He scourges you with the whip of death. He's been beating you down only to have you raise yourselves back up. Grab hold of his hand. He will lift you on wings of eagles. Don't waste this hunger on the bread that ain't going to feed your bellies but for more than an hour or two. Show him with your strong faith and willpower that you are worthy, and he will feed you till you want no more. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. more. Bread of heaven, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. My voice had raised the thunder and the rain. The fearsome winds pummeled the town square. And it was just then the raggedy woman come busting through the crowd, eyes bulging with despair. And friends, she give out a story don't nobody ever want to hear. He's killed our youngest, my husband. He went mad when he seen her starving to death. Now he's turned the rifle on himself, but he ain't passed yet. I need a priest. Well, their place was way upriver. It was a rowboat to take us up in them woods, but there weren't nobody willing to risk their lives with me in the awful storm. I marched down the banks of the river. I grabbed hold of the oars. I was fixing to go by myself when I seen Agnes running towards me, yanking herself loose from Elijah. I'll go with you. I can't say for certain how we made it to where that father lay bleeding in the mud, cradling his dead daughter in his arms while his other two children wept over to the side of the barn. Agnes come with me. We prayed over the man, give him to understand he was forgiven that awful deed, but how that sin would visit itself on those little ones left behind, that was a mystery. Storm settled down late afternoon. Word went out and a group come up from town with what little bit of food they could spare for that widow and them children. But they come for something else. They come for me. They told me I was what they needed in them dark days that the Almighty had brought down on them. Now you can ask me anything but that. I heard the call when I was a boy. I'm bound to go forth into all the world. My time here is done. I can't be shut in by these dark hills, this narrow valley. My voice is meant to be heard throughout all creation. Tall, lean feller with sunken cheeks and weary gray eyes, named Dillard Boggs, stepped forward from the group. We seen you risk your life in the awful storm for the worst sinner. What you done rung like a church bell in our ears, and we thank you for it, Reverend. But Reverend, maybe we won't even remember it tomorrow. In the end, weren't them words, powerful though they was, that made me stay on. I was determined to heed my call. No. It was young Agnes, setting off to the side, gazing out at the mountains, one hand on her breast, that beautiful face drenched in the sunset's glow. Oh, I'm just listening. Seemed like the air all around me has turned into a song. To my heart, you are my darling. At my door, you're welcome in. At my gate, I'll meet you, darling. Oh, if your love could only win. When I'm asleep, I'm a-dreaming about you. When I'm awake, I find no rest, and every moment feels like an hour, with aching pains all across my breast. I'd rather be in some dark valley where that sun don't never shine than to see you another man's darling when I know that you should be mine. What I never knowed before all come to me through Agnes. My young wife gave me everything she had in her heart. She blessed me with a son. Hey, Daddy. Daddy, you know what I'm going to be when I grow up, Daddy? I'm going to be a preacher like you, Daddy. I'm going to have me a bigger church than yours, though. I'm going to have the biggest church you ever did see. Living up there in that space, squeezing between two mountain ranges where you didn't get no more than an hour of sunshine peeking through in the wintertime. I had me a greater light. Warmed my very soul, made every burden bearable. My Agnes could always see where I was hurting. She could pierce through my loneliness. She taught me everything I knowed about gentleness of spirit. With that soft way of speaking to me that never had no judgment of any kind, she would ask me why, when my flock needed so badly to hear soothing words, I was so hard on them. Brand, you bruise when you ought to caress. Brand, you bruise when you ought to caress. I fought her on that. I pointed out that chapter in the good book where Jesus begged his Father in the olive grove, take this cup from me. He never got no answer, but he was bound to drink that cup to the dregs. I expect I read her the entire book of Job, chapter and verse, twice through. And Agnes, sweet Agnes, she never give me no fight at all, just put them little girl hands of hers in mine. Brand, lift me up to that mountaintop you've come to and show me what you've seen. Lead me up that hard and stony path and share your courage with me. I've done that for her. I've done what she asked. I'd always had to will myself to do anything. Then come the great test. That pestilence come back again, just when we thought we had it licked. We couldn't pray it away. If the river had swelled up and flooded the valley again, we could have handled that, but we couldn't fight no sickness you can't see. It hit my family twice in the same week. The word you preach has got to mean something. That word was tested now like it never been tested before. My boy down with a fever, my mother laying on her deathbed across town. Time run out. I needed a sign. I needed it quick. Them heavy stone walls of doubt raised themselves on every side and pinned me in. Now, every time the doctor come to me from my mother's deathbed, he had a new message for me. She is willing to give up more of her money now, Reverend Brand, if only you'd just come and give her your blessing. Well, she weren't never willing to part with all of it. Not even to save her eternal soul. That doctor pleaded with me. Agnes pleaded with me. Ola Bell Tucker, my mother's nearest neighbor, never even liked her all the years they'd known each other. She pleaded with me. Now, Lord knows your mama never did love nothing more than money, and that is a sin, Reverend Brand. But now she ain't long for this world, so you just got to come and give her your blessing, Reverend Brand. You go back and tell her God is waiting on one word and one word only. All. My mother had some words too before she gave up the ghost. The doctor told them to me. God ain't half so cruel as my son. I am a poor pilgrim of sorrow, cast out in this wide world to roam. I have no hope for the morrow. I've started to make heaven my home. What happens next goes by so fast it's still all jumbled up in my head. The doctor comes out of the cabin and tells me my boy's fever is too high and climbing. You've got to get him out of this cold valley and down to the city where there's a proper hospital, Reverend Brand. I'm fixing to run for the neighbor's rig while Agnes bundles the child up in a blanket, sponges the hot sweat from off of his forehead, little cheeks, but the doctor stops me with a hand on my shoulder. Now, you're mighty hard on others, Reverend Brand. But ain't it different when it's your own boy who's in danger? I shake him off. Next thing I know, I am hitching that nag to the wagon when I hear an unearthly screech from up above. A demon hawk circling above the treetops. The branches are dancing in the bitter wind. And sitting up there on a fence rail like she's sprung up out of thin air. It's that same wild girl that's always shadowing me. Do you see him? The preacher's flying away on the back of that bird. Ugly church in the valley's shut down for good. They'll all have to come to my ice church in the mountains from now on. Go down to the graveyard and see for yourself. Devil's letting all the souls out, taking down names, all because the preacher's flying away on the back of that hawk. Preacher made everybody give up what was most precious to him. Said they was idol worshipers. Even let his own mother go to her grave unredeemed. But he couldn't let go of his own little idol wrapped up in a blanket. Look at him flying away now in the back of that hawk, just to keep from letting go of his idol. Her laugh slices through me like a cold steel blade. Before I know what's happening, my legs is carrying me back to the door of our cabin, where Agnes stands, face white with fear, holding our child in her arms. What is it, Brand? What's happened? Seemed like I can't go no forward and no back. Seemed like I ain't got no words. But, Brand. Agnes reads the look in my eyes. Turns. Takes the child back inside. My boy never woke up again. Sometimes I'm tossed and driven, I know not where to roam. I'd heard of a city called heaven, I started to make it my home. It was the next Christmas Eve. Sleet was coming down hard. Agnes was sitting on the floor next to a tiny tree she tricked out with the baubles from just a year ago when our boy had been flushed with excitement. Now she had a box of his things she was going through. His little wood horse with rope to pull it with. A pair of his little trousers, his boots, his sweater and such. I'd come in from gathering firewood, I heard her talking to the boy, same as if he was still alive. Christmas Eve. Mama's going to let you stay up later tonight, but now got to promise me you shut your eyes tight and go right to sleep after you crawl into bed. Swear to me now. All right then. I'd already had to close the shutters up to keep her from going on about the boy seeing the Christmas lights from the graveyard. When I heard that faint knocking at my door, I rushed open it. It was a woman and a child. They stood there shivering in the bitter cold. They were black. Woman weren't nothing but a sack of bones. A threadbare shawl covering up her head was soaked through. Her thin dress clung to her. She had her boy pressed close to her side for whatever shielding she could manage. 'Twas their eyes that snagged me. Any little bit of food we could spare them weren't going to make no difference in the long run. Now, standing in the doorway to my cabin, I seen what the Lord had rung us in the person of these two wretches, these two outcasts of humankind who didn't have no future at all. He had brung the instrument of my wife's salvation. I seen as clear as anything I'd ever known that Agnes was on the verge, and there was only one way to save her. No, Brand, don't make me, please don't make me do that. She wept, pleaded with me, throwed herself over that box of things as if she was shielding the boy herself. The woman and her child would take their leave. Her cries were so pitiful, that just hardened me all the more. You stay put now, you hear me? Now, Agnes, there ain't no way I'm going to allow my wife to bind herself to the things of this world, no matter how precious they be. It is your eternal soul that's at stake. And you know what you have to do. You gather all them things together that belong to our boy, and you give them to that poor, destitute woman and that suffering child. Go on now. And they was halfway down the road when I seen she had held back his little knit cap. I made her
chase the two of them down to their bare feet and night down in the freezing cold and give that up too. And when Agnes come back in the cabin, her skin was scarlet from the elements, but there was a rapture in her eyes. And it should have been the moment of the greatest joy for the two of us, but then she said something that froze the innermost chamber of my heart. You preached it to me, Brand, and it come back to me in a blaze of knowing. Thank you, husband. Thank you, priest. I know it to be true now beyond any doubt. You know what to be true, child? Why? He dies who sees Jehovah face to face. And with that, her shoulders sagged and the light went out of her eyes, and she allowed us how she was as tired as she'd ever been, and would I mind if she went in and lay down for a while?
If you were my true love, and I were your bow, I'd go to some high mountaintop, tell the whole wide world so. But you're not my true love, and I'm not your bow, so I'll go to some still waterfall and hang my head low. And hang my head low, dear, and hang my head low, and listen to the little birds as the hours come and go. And each little singing bird with its head on the side would twitter to its little mate, and my heartbreak confide. Oh, what shall I do, dear, when I've shed all my tears? Oh, what shall I do, dear, through the long, weary years? For springtime will pass, dear, and summer will too. White-headed winter will know I love you.
After Agnes passed, all that money my mother had scrounged for all her life and clutched to herself before she died, come to me anyways. I used it to build my town a big new church. But I had me a dream, and I was sinking down under the weight of it all. I dreamed I seen Elijah, that young painter that come skipping uphill holding hands with my Agnes first time I laid eyes on her. He looked different. He weren't that fresh-faced young man carrying an easel who loved nothing better than to sit all day painting in a field of wildflowers. And bright blue eyes so full of light and hope was gray and dead looking. He looked like a walking ghost. I called out to him. He commenced to give me his testimony. I fell into gambling and drinking, spending all the money I had on whores, every kind of wickedness. I landed in a hospital where I seen flames licking the walls, thousands of black flies swarming through every room. Got so bad I called on God in my misery to bury me deep in the bowels of the earth. But then God raised me back up, set me on a path to being a missionary in Africa. I'm in a hurry to get there now. And in my dream, I felt a powerful pull on me to tell Elijah everything that happened to me. Look at here. Don't you want to know what happened to that gal you was in love with, Agnes? We was married to each other, had us a child who died, and Agnes passed away too a short time after. And I drug him over to the churchyard to have a look at their two graves growing green side by side. And in my dream, it commenced to pour down rain under a bank of ugly black clouds, and the church bells was tolling so loud I couldn't make out what he was saying to me. But I woke up, and I knowed what he said. It was the last thing Elijah said to me in my dream with them church bells drowning out that dead, flat voice. Your wife is damned to hell, Brand. And so are you. If I cannot sing like angels, if I cannot preach like Paul, I can tell the love of Jesus. I can say he died for all. I can tell the love of Jesus. I can say he died for all. The big day come, and the mayor sent word I was to meet him in the sanctuary before the congregation arrived. Well now, you got you this beautiful new church. You must feel right proud. I said, pride ain't got nothing to do with it. That ain't no matter. But now this here first Sunday, it's got to be a special day. Things have got to look right. What don't look right, I asked. Well, there's two things, Reverend Brand. First off, there's folks who belong in them pews and there's folks who don't. Now, it has come to my attention that you have, on occasion, been ministering to the colored. Well, I don't guess I have to tell you how some folks around here feel about that. Mayor gave me a look like he was expecting me to step in. A little bead of sweat pooled along his upper lip like piss backing up from a cistern. But that ain't no matter. I mean, you go and do what you think God wants you to do, but now there ain't no place for him in this beautiful new church. I fixed him steady. I never left them two jittery eyes a-fluttering this way and that like two birds that was feared to light beware. What is the second thing, Mr. Mayor? Well, now, second thing is this. Tain't no doubt you got a powerful way of preaching. I mean, your words go straight to a body like a shot to the heart. But now the elders done seen it could lead places you ain't intended. To where everybody goes his own way, follows his own inclination, so to speak. And Brand, that way is the blind leading the blind. You stir a body up to where he thinks he knows the heat more than he knows, that don't make for a good citizen. Mayor starts to get more confident in his text. Now he starts to puff himself up. They has got to be led by them as knows better than them. And if you go on telling them to follow that voice of God that's in their own heads, you just open the door to calamity. Surely you can see that. Mayor went on talking past that, but I left off listening. Seemed like I was seeing our sanctuary for the first time. Them polished wooden pews, them ceiling beams we laid out so straight and so solid, and that simple wood cross behind that pulpit I was to climb up into in less than an hour. And I seen it for what it was. An empty shell. A place where a sinful generation looking for excuses for leading a timid life would be arriving soon to suck about his sustenance out of the tit of Jesus. Jesus is the one who made the sacrifice for him. Jesus is the one who carried that cross up that hill with the blood streaming down his face mixed with the sweat and the dirt and the spittle of children. It's his legs they broke after they nailed his hands to the crossbars. Also, my congregation, my white congregation, wouldn't have to suffer nothing. Just come sit in them pews, mutter a few words, and suck on that tit. Going home congratulating themselves on the way they're living. Well, I am bound to thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have given me a power of wisdom this morning. It was the last Sunday in February. The wind was whipping down out of the hills like a locomotive out of control. I met my congregation at the door of their brand new church, and I looked them in the eye one by one. Poor folks with poor ways, that was my flock. They ain't never had nothing but a hard road to travel all their days. All of them come from a line of folks who've been laughed at and spit on and deprived of their land and despised for their ways as far back as anybody could remember. Most of them couldn't read or write their own names. I know them. I was one of them. And I had stayed on to minister to them when all I had wanted was to go into the wider world and preach the gospel. They weren't nothing but trust and belief in their preacher in them eyes, but there were other eyes on the back of my neck, eyes of judgment, eyes of the mayor and the elders. With nary a word, I marched down to the banks of the river, listened at the footsteps of the congregation falling in behind me, and I pitched that church key into the rapids. Hear me now. Brothers and sisters, you listen at me with your whole selves. Now, none of you ain't never had nothing, but I'm here today to tell you you have been chosen. Now, ain't none of your doing, but you have each and every one been called on to bear witness and to give everything you have. You stand at the crossroads. You followed a vision, built you a church that would be so big and so fine to be able to hold all that there is inside its walls. Your preacher gave you that vision, and you followed him, and you raised it up, and on the very day you would go in and consecrate this place, your preacher done seen it ain't nothing but another temptation from the devil. Our church don't have no walls. Our church don't have no bounds at all. The floor of our church is the earth beneath our feet, and its roof shoots straight up above them clouds. And with that, I turned my face to the snow that was beginning to fall and the wind that was picking up, and I headed toward the mountains, calling back over my shoulder to all those that had the will and the flame within to join my army of the Lord. On the top of Mount Zion is a city, and the earth with its glory it doth fill. And I look upon its beauty in the morning when I reach that city on the hill. Oh, that city on Mount Zion, though a pilgrim, yet I love thee still. I'll not leave thee through the ages when I reach that city on the hill. And I'll stay here until my Savior calls me, trying daily to perform his will. And he'll say I'm to be well done up yonder when I reach that city on that hill. Oh, that city on Mount Zion, though a pilgrim, yet I love thee still. I'll not leave thee through the ages when I reach that city on the hill. When my flock got cold and hungry and scared, and the mayor lied to him to get him back down the mountain, don't follow this man. He's leading you astray. He could be the Antichrist, I tell you. And they rushed at me throwed them stones at me and accused me of all kinds of perfidy. I just stood there and took it. There were no more words. If I'd ever had the Spirit moving inside me, sure weren't there now. They snarled at me. They throwed every word I'd ever said back in my face, and when I heard them words, they sounded like the ravings of a madman, and I would have laughed, but my mouth was full of cinders. So when they left me alone on the mountain, and I see that I made it to that Wild Girls Ice Church after all, and she come over to me, carrying that shotgun, put her fingers on my cheeks and drew them back with the blood on them, give me that look. I know what she was thinking before she even opened her mouth. Now I know who you are. There's blood on your forehead from where the thorns cut into your flesh. There's blood on your hands from where they drive the nails into your palms. You're him. The one they always tell us coming back to us. Time came to a full stop. Couldn't hear no wind. Couldn't hear a single bird in the treetops. Them brown eyes of hers was like twin pools dropping down into a bottomless well, and I just catapulted in. Commenced to drop deeper and deeper to a place that didn't have no depth, a place where don't nobody ever find you again, a place where I knowed I was about to be washed clean, and everything had been clinging to me since I was a boy. I ain't him. I ain't no savior. I ain't nothing at all no more, so please just go and leave me be. Friends, I seen the truth when I was sinking down into that bottomless well. I seen it in a blaze of knowing. I seen what Jesus lived. It was a loneliness so deep it didn't have no depth. It's like always being a stranger arriving in some strange town where you don't know nobody, being able to see into every window, rich houses or the meanest shacks with the roof caving in. Seeing the families sitting at the dinner table, their children's toys scattered all over the floor, families sitting and talking, or just staying silent, just being with each other and knowing that ain't never going to be for you. You're an orphan. You'll always be an orphan. And that was a feeling I knowed my whole life, but it went further down and deeper than that to where what wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, for my soul. To bear the dreadful curse for my soul. Can I move on now?
back and have a conversation.